Hello. Today we'll talk about two architects. The first one is Joseph Maria Olbrich, and let's read a little bit about him. Joseph Maria Olbrich, born on the 22nd of December, 1867, but he died on the 8th of August, and today is the 8th of August, but not 1908, but 2023. And that's the reason we talk about him. Was an Austrian architect and one of the Vienna Secession founders. Olbrich studied architecture at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, an excellent school, and the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, where he won several prizes. These included the Prix de Rome, for which he traveled in Italy and North Africa. In 1893, he started working for Otto Wagner, what a change, the Austrian architect, and probably did the detailed construction for most of Wagner's Wiener Stadtbahn, metropolitan railway buildings. And they built a lot of them, and they can be seen today as well. In 1897, Gustav Klimt, Maria Olbrich, Joseph Hoffmann, and Koloman Moser founded the Vienna Secession Artistic Group. Olbrich designed their exhibition building, the famous Secession Hall, which is a glorious building in the present as well, a treasure of Vienna, which became the movement's landmark. In 1899, Ernst Louis, Grand Duke of Hesse, founded the Darmstadt Artists Colony, for which Olbrich designed many houses, including his own, and several exhibition buildings. Joseph Maria Olbrich gained Hessian citizenship in 1900 and was appointed to a professorship by the Grand Duke. In 1903, in the following years, Olbrich executed diverse architectural commissions and experimented in applied arts and design. He designed pottery, furniture, book bindings, and musical instruments. Very nice. His courtyard and interiors at the St. Louis World's Fair won the highest prize at the exhibition. At the time, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch newspaper wrote of his pavilion, "The interior decorators of the United States are now talking about the Olbrich Pavilion. It is already indicated as one of the things at the World's Fair which will leave a permanent mark upon American life." Not bad. He was subsequently appointed corresponding member of the American Institute of Architects. His architectural works, especially his exhibition buildings for Vienna and Darmstadt secessions, had a strong influence on the development of the Art Nouveau style. Again, we read about Joseph Maria Olbrich. This was the man who unfortunately died at 41. Here he looks young and fresh and having a future. I remember what Oscar Wilde, in his humorous way, said. He said, "I always liked a man with a future and a lady with a past." Okay, again, Joseph Maria Olbrich. Here he is, the architect and designer and proud owner of rather interesting mustache. This was the time. Drawings by Maria Olbrich. This is a study for it looks like the secessionist building or a study prior to the final decisions about the building. We are going to see it in detail. A house which appears to be naive for us today, but we have to understand, at that time, Austria was still part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. It was an empire. Let's not forget this. So the patriarchal system and tradition were very much in place. But he was an innovator and a very interesting creator. A creator who wanted to separate himself from the conventional forces of the architectural or cultural establishment, and that's why he became a founder member of the secessionist movement. There was a secessionist movement in München as well in Germany, but the one in Vienna, very important, with the very prominent artists and architects associated with it. This is the side elevation of the secessionist movement, secessionist building, designed by Maria Olbrich. Otherwise, see here on the right, it's written at the bottom, architect Joseph Olbrich, M. Olbrich, Maria Olbrich, but on the right we see a signature by Gustav Klimt, the great Austrian painter and artist. I admire very much these people, all of them. There was something magical then. They had pride, these artists and architects, and they were respected by society, and they were influential. They had the means to build their headquarters right in the center of Vienna. Ornament was still very much present, as you can see, graphically as well. So it wasn't just about structure. There was also about ornament, and ornament found its place even in the pages of books. Secession. What do we see there? We see a torch, no? A man with a torch. Is it a torch? Maybe even a plant could be a torch, the torch of greenness, the torch of nature. Why is it that we don't have that idealism any longer? He designed everything. He designed, you see here, lamps and furniture. But let's start with the very best, and that is the secessionist building in Vienna from 1898. He was still a very young man. He must have been very, appreciated if he was given this commission. Let's not forget there were some heavy architects at that time, like Otto Wagner. This is the building as it is today, and it can be seen by any visitor in the capital of Austria. Now, if I contemplate this elevation, this facade, the entrance, the main elevation of the building, what do I see? Well, it's a container, it's a museum, it's a gallery, it's a container of something that in this case is art. But why the need of the golden globe above? What was its meaning? We know the meaning of the words written underneath. I'm talking about here. I do not know German, but I know the translation of what is written here, and that translation sounds like this. To each time or era, it's art, and to art, it's freedom. The second line is, and to art, it's freedom. This is something we should, appreciate ourselves. Indeed, you cannot build in the 21st century as you would have built in the 18th century, for example. Your time requires its art, and art requires its freedom. It requires freedom. And then we see Ver Sacrum, which was the name of the magazine they published, the secessionists. Of course, they were very well positioned within the Austrian society, since they built right in the center of the capital of the Austrian Empire, the manifesto, architectural manifesto, the secessionist building. Yes. I am emotional when I contemplate this work, and when I contemplate that time, when you had a group of brilliant artists coming together and architects working for the emancipation of the ideas that they were defending, and defending against the conformist forces of their time and place. They wanted to segregate themselves from the conformism of those structured, hierarchical forces within the society. And I think any creative person, an architect, a writer, a composer, a painter, bringing something new in life, in society, in art, it requires requires effort, requires sometimes trying to negotiate with a society which is reluctant to too much innovation. And if you can find people to associate yourself with, all for the better. I'm not sure in our time still exists an avant-garde, a genuine avant-garde. I'm afraid that the avant-garde sold its soul. And one of perhaps the genius of capitalism, one of its traces of or traits of geniusness, if there is such a word, probably not, is the fact that capitalism understood a way through which to annihilate the rebellious artist. Instead of throwing the artist into the gutter, capitalism bought the rebellious artist. And the effect was the same, annihilating the artist through the pleasure principle, to caress a cat to death. And it worked. Maybe this is one of the reasons we don't have today, a vehement avant-garde. Because if someone stands up, in obvious ways, capitalism invests in that someone, and when you receive a lot of money for your art, or you are commissioned, or you receive professorships at prestigious schools, there isn't any longer that conflictual reason for the avant-garde to still be. So we see here again in the capital of an important empire, the last European empire, we see the product of the secessionist movement, their headquarters, making a statement. And the statement is written on the facade: to each time its art, and to art its freedom. So from the periphery, the avant-garde moved at the center, at the very center. And this is something beautiful. I listened even to Alvin Boyarsky, the famed director of the Architectural Association in London. He was criticizing the proliferation of architecture schools in Italy and France, but he admired Vienna, where existed still a very active art life. And it's one of the paradoxes of the Austrian architecture, Austrian culture, and Vienna's culture, that although it can be a very conformist society, at the same time there is room there for a vehement avant-garde to this very day. Anyway, this is the building designed by Joseph Maria Olbrich. Now today, of course, nobody would, well, actually the flowers are coming back to architecture in abstracted forms or in literal forms. Who would have expected now from the positions of an orthodox modernity that flowers adorn even the facades of a building by Valerio Olgiati? But somehow, I don't know, maybe I'm just nostalgic. But when I look at this building, I see idealism that very idealism that was appreciated and advocated for by someone like Lebbeus Woods. Something is missing in our time, and I think what is missing is that, you know, winged idealism that nourished the souls and the imaginations and the minds of the people who, at the beginning of the 20th century or the end of the 19th century, began to assert themselves. The plan is very, you know, you don't expect something revolutionary when you contemplate the plans, right? They are symmetrical, they seem to be static, but when you look at the building, and then you see even the graphic representation of the plan of the building. Who would draw who would draw such plans, architectural plans today? You know, here we see echoes. There is a quest for modernity. There was a quest for modernity, but there are also echoes coming from the prior form of art, the art of academism, even, you know, the Beaux-Arts, the graphic elements of the page show the coexistence of two systems in a way, an anticipation of modernity and also echoes of the art that preceded modernity. Maybe this very ambivalence or ambiguity makes this period so interesting. And it's very possible that in the present, and there are actually at this very moment, there are signs that there is some kind of flirtation with the Beaux-Arts architecture. If we only consider the works of Mark Foster Gage, who teaches at Yale University in the United States. But there are other architects, and even Bernard Tschumi told me in a conversation I had with him that, I mean, who would have expected now that the deconstructivist Bernard Tschumi, or at least he was part of the exhibition Deconstructivism at the Museum of Modern Art in New York at the beginning of the 1990s, that he would assert that a very important architecture school was actually the Beaux-Arts, the l'Académie des Beaux-Arts in Paris. So it's very possible that now in the 21st century, elements of what we call the Beaux-Arts could come back to architecture. And together with them, of course, ornament. And ornament is also very, has a chance of rejuvenation thanks to parametry, scripting and programming, the very technologies of the front line of the present. And what do we see here? We also see the presence of ornament in literal forms. We also see references to mythology, something we don't even think of in today's architecture. But if you consider a narrative architecture, then maybe, you know, some references to symbolism, to mythology, to meaning could reassert themselves. And then you have the gold, the golden leaves, the golden nature. Nature is not golden, but symbolically it could be seen as being golden if we consider what Frank Lloyd Wright said when asked, do you believe in God? And he, not in gold, but in God. And he said, I do, but I spell it nature. So if there is a relationship between nature and God, or God and nature, and if goldness represents, a superior entity, then we could see why golden leaves could symbolize the divine nature. I just improvised some. I was thinking aloud, improvising on the theme of what we look at here in the details of the secessionist building in Vienna or in Vienna, built by Joseph Maria Olbrich, who died on the 8th of August. But, you know, again, we look at this fragment of the main elevation and we see a richness which most of our buildings do not have, because we are only obsessed with analysis and structure. We banished ornament, we banished symbolism, we banished mythology, we banished narration. And maybe we should think twice. I mean, is what we look at here, and let's not forget, Vienna was the city also of Adolf Loos, who was against ornament, who wrote Ornament and Crime, although he himself used ornament occasionally by employing a very ornamented marble. You know, when I look at this, I realize that Alvar Aalto was right. Architecture belongs to culture, not to civilization. Here we see culture. That's what we look at. The Steur house in St. Pölten. Now here, this is also a very interesting house, you know. Who would think of doing something like this today, you know, to have depictions with a certain meaning, illustrations, actually, on the facade of the building? Why not? Why not? Is it detrimental to the facade of the building? I don't think so. I think it brings a richness, even if you don't understand the narration, the meaning of what is narrated. It is intriguing. It stirs up your curiosity. It's certainly richer than a just blank white facade. Plus, it is in the spirit of the time and of the place. Art Nouveau was asserting itself, and you know, these are just some manifestations. Look at these details. You know, they are expressions of a certain sensitivity. They have a certain complexity. They are artistic products, expressions of an artistic talent. And the architect was still rather an artist than a businessman or a homo economicus. Even the most cynical cannot deny the fact that even architecture should consider, sometimes at least, being beautiful. Another house, 1901. Still, Austro-Hungarian Empire was an empire. And look at this house also. You know, is it better just a white cube? I'm not so sure. Look at the entrance door. It's an event when you cross the threshold. You know, it's not just a rectangular opening in a white wall. It has character. It has, it negotiates in more, you know, kind terms with the one who attempts to enter the building, even the curvature of the canopy. And so, you know, this is an art which probably needs being reconsidered. Joseph Maria Olbrich, and he did all these things when he was still very young. I mean, just the doorway, the entrance doorway is an event architecturally. Another house in Darmstadt, this time in 1901. Again, you know, the entrance into the building is for human beings. It's not for cyborgs. It's not for animals. It's for human beings. And human beings at that time still indulged in thinking that they deserve to be called, at least sometimes, Homo sapiens. Look at how this is framed here. You know, there is a gentleness of line which connects with the curvatures at the top and with the curvatures of the entrance door into the building. Otherwise, the building maybe is not so complex or excessively interesting. But because of these so-called details, I mean, try to compare such a doorway with a banal rectangular blank door. Here it has character. No, it has sensitivity. And then there is the material, solid, massive wood, and then gold again, goldness. What is this? Villa Max Friedman, 1898. Yes, there is tradition, but you see also the relationship between architecture, the art of building, with the art of illustration, graphic or pictorial, which we eliminated in the name of what? Minimalism, which became rather oppressive in its own excesses, because it's almost a paradox that minimalism could become its very opposite when it is pushed to an extreme. You also have to consider that Joseph Maria Olbrich was still a very young architect, still very much influenced by what it was called and is called and will be called tradition. If he lived other 40 years, it's possible he would have developed, who knows in what way. Now, his own House Olbrich in Darmstadt, here it is. This is in a way more radical because it's a cube, but it is a cube that is adorned with ornaments. Not everywhere. There are ornaments, and there is also a more abrupt form of penetrating the walls on the superior level. If we eliminate the ornaments, do we gain something or we lose something? I would say that in this particular case, perhaps we would lose something. In other cases, maybe it depends. It depends. But I think the ornament is bringing in the architectural work a certain dimension, a certain sensitivity that maybe we shouldn't ignore, because those ornaments connect with at least with the trees in the spring, which begin again to be green and to have leaves and even flowers. So I would say that ornament is some kind of a bridging between more or less robust structure and nature. The Olbrich house in Darmstadt by Joseph Maria Olbrich, his own house. Now, Mathilde Koche in Darmstadt, this is a poster which he himself designed, Maria Olbrich. He was a graphic artist as well, a furniture designer, an architect. He did many things. You can see these buildings in almost any history of architecture. Very interesting architect, and he was able to handle not just small buildings, houses, but also larger public buildings like the ones we see here. An older picture of the same thing in Darmstadt. So he was quite capable of also doing monumental architecture. I particularly like the tower. A remarkable architect indeed. Too bad he died at 41. There was craft, craft of course, and there was an understanding of tectonics. Look at the materials. I mean, this shows complexity acting in the name of what once was called the Queen of the Arts, that is architecture. Who would call today architecture the Queen of the Arts? Who would bring such giant sculptures or any sculptures or statues, to adorn or to flank the entrance into a building? Not many people, although I think even sculptures or statues are coming back to architecture. And here is even a Russian Orthodox church. Quite a collage of surprising elements, architectural elements. In fact, we look at 4 distinct architectures sharing, a common space. Indeed, a very, very interesting architect, Joseph Maria Olbrich. And I think because I reflected on the very vital culture of Vienna and Austria even today, maybe this difficult meeting between, on one hand, the echoes of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the last European empire, and then the seeds of a, I like to call it today, the vehement avant-garde. I don't think there was an accident that psychoanalysis was born there in Vienna. Sigmund Freud came to Vienna. Then you had Red Vienna, which was a communistic Vienna after the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. A very interesting phenomenon itself. Who would expect a Red Vienna in Vienna, which was the seat of the emperor, of the empire? And yet it happened, and there are incredible blocks of flats testifying about the communistic Vienna. Many left-wing artists and architects and writers, intellectuals, flooded Vienna in quest of a fresh air, culturally speaking. So a very interesting culture. Now, this building is in Darmstadt. It's not in Austria, it's not in Vienna, it's in Germany. But I am talking about the cultural climate in which Joseph Maria Olbrich was formed and acted and built. A very fruitful, and maybe, who knows? I mean, I was asking myself, why is it that at the peak of our democracies, people are still obsessed about the former Prince Charles, now King Charles, and the former Princess Diana? Because there was a widespread interest in them. But why, since we are democratic societies, why would we be interested in princes and princesses? Maybe in the collective unconscious, there is still a desire even for a monarchy. I mean, even Salvador Dali described himself as an anarchist and a monarchist at the same time. We end this short presentation, imperfect as it is, on Joseph Maria Olbrich with some furniture designs that he produced. In a rather short professional life, he created a lot. Now, again, we look at this chair and we are, the functionalist, the minimalist would ask, what is this? Why is the need for this incision into the wood? And why this capricious thing here? But art is complex, and there is room and even need for elements of what Voltaire called the superfluous. And he even advocated the need of superfluousness. Not everything, like, certain things, could be judged as being superfluous, like this here, or I don't know what's this, or even, the way these things, but they have a role, an aesthetical role, which is important, even if it's so-called capricious or subjective. I think it would do us good to bring back subjectivity to architecture, and even capriciousness, and even bring the some beautiful superfluousness to the work. Like, you look at this chair, several capricious artistic elements, or subjective elements, or superfluous elements, but they add flavor to the and beauty to the object. In this case, a chair. Maybe not the most comfortable chair in the world, but not the ugliest either. Yes, an architect can do many things. Can do urbanism, can do ruralism, if there is such a thing. Not yet, but Rem Koolhaas did dedicate a large exhibition at the Guggenheim Museum to the villages of the world, to the rural, to rurality. So maybe one day we will have ruralism, maybe even replace urbanism with ruralism. And then, so an architect can do urbanism, ruralism, furniture design, graphic design, buildings, can do many things. An interesting piece, this one as well. Joseph Maria Olbrich. Architects love to design chairs. And Miss van der Rohe said that, a chair is, at least sometimes, or I'm not sure if he said this or it's just my addition, he probably meant sometimes, at least, a chair is more difficult to do than a skyscraper. And it's true. A good chair. This piece is interesting too. Look how it is cut here on the side of this piece of furniture at the bottom. Very interesting, no? They do matter, these things. It's almost some kind of a touch of, some Ottoman. Let's not forget the Turks arrived at the gates of Vienna. So maybe you could see here, echoes of the Orient arriving in Vienna. Design. He also designed jewelry because he loved beauty. What can you do? Joseph Maria Olbrich. Okay, and now if you want, let's have a short discussion, and then we'll talk about Paul Rudolph, also associated with the day of August 8th.